31 lives lost. And just a fortnight ago, that number was 20. That is at least 51 Kenyan lives in a short space of 2 weeks. And looking back at the last 4 weeks, there have been protests at least once a week. The most recent one being Sabasaba. That is just 3 short days ago. Leaders have responded, and it was a case of implosion meeting rapture, as President William Ruto and his former deputy Rigathi Gachagua traded accusations that include talk of an attempted coup. We assess the Sabasaba aftermath that includes loss of lives, destruction of property, and the eruption of political rhetoric. Later on Sam Sense, we shall reflect on the concept of adulthood, especially political. On Kaikai's Kicker, who is the inciter between Nelson Koech and Kakan Mayo? On My Take, where are the coup plotters? Or shall we start with the effigies first? Jamila's memo tonight is X-rated and can only air after 11 p.m. The gang is here.
Hii fujo yote wananiletea, mbona hawakuletea Kibaki? Mbona hawakuletea Uhuru? Mimi nimenyamaza, mimi nimewavumilia, lakini mahali imefika. Enough is enough. You can call me whatever names you want to call me, but I will make sure that there is peace and stability in Kenya by all means possible.
Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta were guided by the Constitution and the rule of law. They did not capture our constitutional institutions to work for them, instead of working for Kenyans. They never killed children. They never attempted to build churches in State House. They never organized militias to destroy people's property and kill them. That is why you have a problem. And we also want to remind you that Mwai Kibaki had a difficult time from you, William Ruto. Videos are everywhere. You cannot say that Mwai Kibaki did not face resistance. It's on record that you gave hell to President Kenyatta for 5 years. So it is hypocritical for you to allege that Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta had a very easy time. Most of the problems Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta had came from yourself, and it's on record.
What a week it has been. I think the highest number of deaths that we've witnessed during the protests in one day, just one day, 31 people were killed. Welcome to the program. The hashtag is NewsGang at CitizenTV Kenya. Also on SMS, the number is 22422. We look forward to hearing from you. And in the wake of 31 lives lost, the reaction that we saw from government, I think, is the place to start, because what an interesting reaction to a day of protests, a day of barricades, a day when people were greatly inconvenienced, when 31 lives were lost. But Jamila, the first reaction was not empathy, not condoling, but it was anger.
Yes, Yvonne. In fact, when we listened to the president speaking in Kilimani, I think to the affordable housing project, it was a tone of nimekasirika yangu yote. I'm very, very upset with how things are going. And yeah, it is okay to be upset because things are not going well. A few days before that, 31 people had been killed. To date, we're still seeing families going for autopsies of their loved ones. And you hear them being told that they died from gunshot wounds. We have children at Kenyatta National Hospital. We're hearing there's some even as young as 7 years old who were shot while they were in their houses. There was 12-year-old Bridget, who died while they were watching television with her mom in Dumberry. A stray bullet got into the house and shot her in the head, and she died. We have families who are still looking for their loved ones ambao hawajaonekana tangu siku ya Sabasaba. What do you tell those people? Because not a word of compassion came out of the president when he spoke. He did not say we condole with the families.
But did he acknowledge the loss of lives at all during that speech?
No, he didn't. We didn't hear it when we were watching him speak in Kilimani. And one of the things that comes to mind is that the audience that he was speaking to, he had gone there for the housing, affordable housing project. and there were these mamas who were there. And I'm sure they had not come there, whether they were brought there or not, because, of course, kuna maswali kuhusu waliletwa ama walikuwa pale, notwithstanding. I don't think they came there to be told about, kusomewa about kuna jaribio la kupendua serikali, kuna wale ambao wananipinga. They came there probably kuja kusikiza mambo ya nyumba ilikuwa launched, manyumba yalikuwa yanakuwa launched. But then the president goes on this long tirade and blames everybody for everything, without even thinking of maybe there could be the problem on this side. I need to look inwards and see, pengine kuna shida ingine hapa hivi ambayo mimi sitaki kuona ama sioni. Because 31, Yvonne, is a high number.
Yeah.
And in fact, we did an analysis, and in the past 1 year, according to figures from the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, 115 people died in the protest since June 2024. That's 115 families who've lost a loved one. And not even acknowledging that and saying we condole is, I think, in my opinion, insensitive. It makes people think that the value for human lives in this leadership, in this administration, is pretty low, that it's okay that 31 people have died, and you don't say anything. In fact, it surprised me when I saw the CS for Foreign Affairs, who's the Chief Cabinet Secretary, condoling with the victims of the floodings in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sad that about 119 or so people died there due to flooding, when you've not had anyone condoling with the families of those who had been killed in the Gen Z protests. The tone of voice, what was said, who it was said to, was really wanting, in my opinion. And then, of course, you had the reaction from the opposition on the same. But I think it is important that that acknowledgement comes through, Yvonne, because Yoku Somewa reminds me of how things were just right after the June 25th protest in 2024 when the president spoke at State House and how angry he was. But when you hear words like coup, terrorism, treason, majaribio ya kupindua serikali, we are having people in court being charged with terrorism, it's a bit worrying, I guess, in terms of where exactly we're going as a country. And it's important now that we look at what this all means. Tutaendelea hivi paka lini?
Yeah, and that's the thing about who blinks first and who sort of comes down to listen. And just as we were talking about, and I'd like us to listen to the order that he delivered, 1-3, but you know, interestingly, like we said, he was heavier on the destruction of property and what should be done to those found looting businesses. So I'd like us to listen to that as well.
Ambaye anachukua moto, anaenda kuchoma biashara ya mtu, anaenda kuchoma mali ya watu wengine. Mtu kama huyo apigwe risasi miguu, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Yes. Yeah.
So, but curiously, I would wonder what the president's thoughts would be about anybody who is seen to or found to have taken the life of another. So what is his prescription for those who killed the 31 people? If this is shoot in the leg order for those, how about for those who killed the 31? But then the president went further because this is not just about property, apparently, but he made another grave allegation, and I think one that he has done before. So back in 2024, it was Ford Foundation. In 2025, there is another plot, yet again, to overthrow the government.
Kwanza niliona ati wanasema ati sasa hawatangojea 2027 ati tupige kura. Ati wanataka kupanga fujo. Ati wapange maandamano. Ati wachome mali ya watu. Ati walete maafa Kenya. Ati ndio wapindue serikali ya Kenya kabla ya 2027. Mimi nataka niwaambie wajaribu. Watajua hawajui. Kenya ni nchi ya demokrasia. Hamuwezi kutuambia ya kwamba mnaweza kupanga fujo ati mpindue serikali ya Kenya. Tafuteni vizuri.
Again, all of this a day after 31 people had been killed. There is no solemnity, there is no somber mood. Even the venue that was chosen for him to make these remarks was rather interesting at a side event. I don't even think too many people, Sam, know that this was an affordable housing project that was being launched or groundbreaking or whatever it was. But it's a very interesting tone to adopt a day after. Or was it 2 days after?
Yeah, it was 2 days after. Yeah. You know, what's fascinating to realize is the venue, as you say, it's a police housing scheme. Remember, under the Affordable Housing Act, there is the provision that there will be institutional housing being constructed using the housing levy. But I'm just wondering, because Kilimani Police Station is within the Dagoretti North constituency, it's not far from a State House, and the president really wanted to see the progress of the housing. I'm just wondering, why was there a need to have what looks like residents of Kilimani attending that?
So this wasn't a launch of a completed project?
It looks like it was an inspection of progress made.
Ongoing,
okay.
So those images, and there has been several stories being told about how those residents ended up in Kilimani. But as you know, Kilimani area, you don't find residents like that.
Like how?
The crowd you
milling about,
and mostly women, listening to the president. Kilimani is Kilimani, so those are not residents of Kilimani first. Secondly, they came to see affordable housing for the police officers. Those are not police officers. I don't know if they are spouses of police officers, but it's interesting to see that crowd in that space. But more importantly, it looks like the president had actually been pained by the events of Saba Saba, the events of June 25th, and frustrated by the political rhetoric that is going on in the country. And one would understand it's human to sound so frustrated, to be so frustrated. But you see, this was 2 days after the fact, and the country had seen the destruction, seen the killings going on. Despite the frustration, you're looking to leadership. Recall on Monday evening, we heard from the ODM leader, Raila Odinga, who was calling the nation to what he terms as intergenerational national conclave. And when he was asked, why are you addressing the nation? Why don't you speak to the president whom you have a working arrangement with? And his response was, the president is part of the nation, and he has heard my statement.
Yes.
So the next natural expectation of Kenyans was, what would the president say about the events of Monday? To end up saying what he said, to claim that this is all politics, and again to miss the point that, and I think someone said, I think it was C.S. Kipchumba Murkomen, that even if a thief or a criminal dies, there is pain to the family.
Yes.
That acknowledgement was important, because when he says, don't kill them, shoot them in the leg, to break their legs, they go to hospital, then to court, he sounds to acknowledge that life is important. But how is it when life is lost, he's not acknowledging it, and perhaps offering his sympathies, because criminals or not, they're still Kenyans, and they have a right to life enshrined in the Constitution. But then again, based on that statement, you saw what happened. And I want us to listen to Rigathi Gachagua responding to that presidential statement, especially on the question of that nobody wants to overthrow the president.
President, nobody wants to throw you. Nobody wants to overthrow your government. Nobody wants you out of power through unconstitutional means. Mr. President, I and the people we work with are on record. We want to remove you from State House through the ballot in 2027. Please relax. We want you to serve your one term. Nobody wants you out of government unconstitutionally. Nobody has any plan to overthrow your administration, Mr. President. The leaders in this country, and indeed 95% of the Kenyan population, want to humiliate you at the ballot. They all relish that moment.
So it is unfortunate that it's coming to this, like it's a political contest of perhaps two of the most influential political figures in the country. unfortunate that this continues at a time that families are hurting. You've seen the stories that we featured in our news of families that are now coming to terms with what happened to their loved ones, witnessing the family of that young man by the name Washira, who was dragged. His body was dragged on by police officers. I mean, it's dehumanizing. Lack of dignity, human dignity, totally. But then there's no that acknowledgement. And I was looking even at the post of the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, which I want to pull out right now, the Kipchumba Murkomen, on the day of Sabasaba. He went ahead to say that, of course, acknowledging the importance of Sabasaba Day, but at the same time, he said that this evening I went around Nairobi City to thank our law enforcement officers who are on duty to ensure the safety of our people and the security of their property. And thanks to their efforts and other officers across the country, incidents of violence, looting and destruction of property were markedly reduced today compared to last week. So you see, there's continued emphasis on importance of property. And property is important because that's how we're able to progress as an economy. But when you lose lives, because the reason why we are spending 28% of the national revenue on education is so that you can build the human capital in the country. When you start losing adults who are already in the workspace, whatever sort of job they're doing, whether they sell, what do you call them, masks, like Boniface Karaoke, or they run blue chip companies, whatever it is, they are making their contribution in the labor force. So for a government to continue without acknowledging that people have died, so that even as you push for corrective measures, even as you talk about these are the people that are responsible, it's the political figures that are responsible, how about acknowledging that important fact? So I think the government has missed that opportunity to sound human, to sound that it cares for the people of Kenya. Despite all the frustrations that are continuing, they have missed on that. Yeah. The other thing, if you're to look at even the sense of property destruction across the country, one wonders, so yes, you're available to protect property in Nairobi, but you're not available to protect property in other parts of the country to an extent that you find business persons coming out and complaining about the impact of this destruction as it has happened. Yeah, and indeed. I just want to interrupt this conversation for a moment and give you the news just in, and this is regarding the appointment of commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Remember, there was a petition challenging their appointment to the High Court, which has just delivered its judgment this evening in that matter. This is the decision of the court. They have dismissed the petition that was seeking to invalidate the appointment of both the chairperson and commissioners of the IEBC. The court also held that that Gazette notice, if you recall, that was issued by the president to formalize their appointments was unlawful because there were conservatory orders that had been issued by the court. However, that initial Gazette notice has been quashed, but their substantive appointments can proceed. And so, according to the courts, the appointments are valid, but the initial Gazette notice is not, but a new Gazette notice can be issued to regularize the appointments in compliance with the court's judgment. So just to simplify that, the High Court has said that the chairperson and the commissioners of the IEBC are duly appointed, but a fresh Gazette notice will be required to regularize their appointments and therefore allow them to take oath of office before the Chief Justice and formally assume their roles at the Commission. So those who are vetted and passed as chairperson and commissioners of the IEBC will now very soon be sworn into office. So ladies and gentlemen, very soon it would seem we now have an Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission in place following that High Court order. I just thought I'd bring that in. Let's carry on with our conversation here, which is regarding, you know, what happened. And I think we're talking about, you know, loss of life is important regardless of who they are and what the law says. But then, Jamila, the president was not the only one who had a lot to say. So it would seem that perhaps there is somebody who has bigger say or has powers exceeding the president, and that would be one member of parliament, Nelson Koech.
I think we need to listen to what he said.
Well, the president said shoot in the legs to disable them and take them to hospital. It would seem this MP speaks after the president and issues even more extensive orders that might not be within his purview constitutionally or otherwise. Let's listen to the Member of Parliament for Bill Good, who also happens to be the chair of the Defence, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee in the National Assembly of Kenya.
Na mimi nataka niseme na nishukuru Rais William Samoei Ruto. Wakati jana umesema shoot but do not kill. I want to repeat it here. In fact, shoot and kill. You cannot have someone coming after your life and you do not want to shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is going to terrorize you and your family and you are telling me you cannot shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is coming after your businesses armed and with weapons and you want to tell me that you cannot use shoot and kill.
Jamila.
You know, we've just all had like a few seconds of silence because really that is worrying. So human life does not matter at all. It does not matter at all. Like shoot and kill, it is okay. That's a life. Huyo ni mtu. Amezaliwa, amefika hiyo miaka amefika, huyo ni mtu. And then when he's speaking like that, he's speaking, in my opinion, from a place of privilege. Because in this country, a huge section of the population has been feeling excluded. You know, you have the elite who, in my opinion, have always had their way, including what John Allen calls the elite consensus, which is what any attempts to watu kusikizana has benefited, with positions being gawanywa by those up there and people still feeling excluded. Even in this country, there are a lot of people who don't feel like wanapataga haki, who don't feel like, who struggle every single day for everything that they get. People who have never had it easy, and the population that has not had it easy, that struggles every day for everything that they have, is quite high. And then you have a member of parliament, a chair of such a powerful committee, a person of privilege, speak like that. Uwa. How can you say that kill people? I mean, what was that? The families of the 115 people who died feel when they hear that. It makes you think like our people's lives did not matter at all. There's a mother to a 12-year-old child who till to date is waiting for justice. Anazungumza anasubiri mtu amsikize. We have another mother of another 12-year-old now. Ameongezeka hapo 2 days ago. Her daughter was killed in their house. Even if he tries to justify and say, oh, muue wale ambao ni looters, wale ambao ni wahuni, wale...
Even for them, the law exists.
The law exists.
Right, yeah.
Hakuna mtu ana haki ya kuchukua maisha ya mtu mwingine, Yvonne. And Gituku spoke about the gentleman who was being dragged into Juja police station. We saw images of the people in masks and Subarus going around Kiserian and those areas killing people. So all that is allowed and justified. Shooting into a crowd, we saw so many of those. Boniface's life does not matter. He was selling masks. He was killed. He wasn't akwa anachochea. Alikuwa ako tu anafanya biashara yake akapigwa risasi. So it's really terrible and awful. And I think it's important that NCIC should question him. Aitwaulizwe maswali. Because that is wrong. That is wrong. What if someone from the opposition said that? Ingekuwa shaenda kushikwa leo.
By this evening.
So sheria ni msumeno.
No?
Unapasa kukata pande zote.
And yet there was one young man, Kakan Mayo, who's, you know,
Alibebo Juju.
Yes, he's sitting somewhere because he said something nowhere near, but, you know, let me not preempt what's going to go in there. But you can take a look at all of these examples and then never mind, these are people who are legislators, they understand the law. It's not within his purview at all.
And is learning from others, because basically this is how the political class views things. One thing they are really low on at the moment, and I want to start with what we saw with the president in Kilimani. The one thing that was clearly missing was empathy. This president struggles with empathy. And by empathy, we mean just that ability to feel the feelings of other people. How do they feel? How do families feel about losing people, even if in the circumstances that we saw on Monday? Because, like we've illustrated there, among the deaths were that of a small 12-year-old girl that was watching television somewhere in Kiambu. Now, when you are president, remember at all times that leaders say that they are the father of the nation.
Yeah.
In fact, there is that father of the nation, then mother of the nation for first lady. Moments like these are the ones that test that, whether you are indeed one. And when you don't show empathy at all, I know there are many ways you can do that. And by this I mean your inability to display your inability to show empathy. One is to turn up 2 days after that, and the tone is one of the kind that we should have expected from protesters on Monday. You know, it's really loud, it's high, the pitch is very high, barely presidential. It was crowing from a sandpit that have won a contest. And I don't know who gets the president to do some of these things. If the president wanted to react about a day that cost 31 lives, lost lots of property, then that was not the best platform to respond. Even the optics were just not adding up, because you remember, I think there was a platform in the middle of somewhere.
Yeah.
So it looks obviously from a raised position, and
talking down.
You're raised and you're raising your voice. There is something wrong. I don't want to go to the merits and demerits, right and wrong of Monday, but when the president stands up, it must look good across, for those who are affected, for those who support him, for those who don't support him. They still need to listen to him as the president of the country, not a partisan victor who has won, like I said, a sandpit contest. Why am I calling this a sandpit contest? Because it turned out to be one, as the events of the day proved. What we are also witnessing, which is what I call a sandpit contest, is the unfinished business in UDA following the fallout after the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua. Rigathi Gachagua, former deputy president, seems to have put everything into this fight against President Ruto. And by joining forming the party and basically becoming a difficult person to handle out there. And unfortunately, you can see on the government side, they have climbed down for this contest. That everything now that happens is seen from the narrow prism of, is Rigathi Gachagua at the end of it? And I just want us to listen to the 1.7 when one of the members of parliament talks about the events of Monday.
Tuambia sijui one term ya nani? Nani alikuambia sisi ndio tutakaa one term? Kibaki hakukaa one term, Uhuru hakukaa one term. Sisi umeona wakati imetufikia ndio sisi ni washenzi tukae one term. Tunapiga term mbili. Fululizo. Kama taifa la Kenya na kama jamii hatuwezi hata siku moja, na wasifikirie sisi ni waoga ati wanatupangia na sisi tumekaa hivi. Kama ni kupanga, wasifikirie hatuwezi kupanga. Ni vile tunapenda amani na wachunge hii amani sana.
Sisi, who is Sisi? I think the only person that was on the ballot in who has won the race and serving the first term is President William Ruto. By Sisi, look at how emotions are starting to be whipped up. Yeah. And I mean ethnic emotions. When you look at Nelson Koech, he's speaking from, what is the name of that village? He's somewhere in his constituency of Belgut. Yeah. That's why he's crowing, you know. Would he say the same in the middle of Nairobi or somewhere in Murang'a? Can he make exactly the same sentiments, same remarks with that same tone? I think our leaders are reacting wrongly to a crisis by throwing emotions into place and increasingly whipping up tribal sentiments. Because by Sisi, I am sure Nelson Koech was not talking about President Ruto, he was talking about the community. And how unfair is this? Because a community doesn't run for president. An individual in the community can run for president. And we saw that, you know, with how Uhuru Kenyatta was treated in his last term, that, you know, the community can also, you know, turn its back on its leader. So what we should watch out for right now is the rise of emotions. You notice two things. Actually, one thing that's common about the speech by Koech, the MP, and the president, the tone is the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's really high up there. And what was that little threat at the end about we can also do something? You know, it's a very loaded threat. And again, without beating about the bush, the threat is ethnic. And haven't they actually been talking ethnicity this week, Yvonne?
Yeah, they indeed have. And before we go into the ethnicity question, because there was a trending hashtag which had over 275,000 tweets, or do we call them posts now? But I just wanted to echo what you were saying about the tone of both the president and Nelson Koech. So while they're speaking about their terms, so you hear what their terms, well, yeah, theirs collectively, clearly they're one. I mean, for an MP to even speak after the president and contradict him and in fact go a step further is interesting. But again, the president made no mistake about reminding us who he is. Let's listen to that.
Na matatizo sana. Hata saa hizi bado hawajaamini mimi ni rais, bado wanahangaika Mimi ndio niko hapa kwa sasa. Wajipange. Mimi ndio niko hapa.
So the question I want to ask is what crisis are they responding to exactly? And what's being said by the protesters? Are we in a different country? Are we hearing or seeing different things? So when people are out on the streets and protesting about the cost of living, about the governance and the rule of law and going to the Constitution, what exactly are they responding to? I think that's what is interesting. Sam, you want to jump in and then we can talk about the big elephant in the room. And today we're going to talk about it, the ethnicity question. We're going to get into that in a bit.
Right. When you listen to it, I think they're still focused on the political question. That's why when you hear them speak, they're talking about the tenure of President William Ruto. They're talking about wengine. Those are the political leaders. You'll see these demonstrations have been interfered with by Ukabila. The president is citing the terms that were served by President Moi. President Moi had several, 24 years. Yeah. Those are many, almost 5, if I'm not mistaken, from 70
well,
to
it depends
2000.
Because, the rule of, the laws changing and everything.
Yes, but in total, those are many terms. Then references President Mwai Kibaki, who was able to complete his 2 terms. President Uhuru Kenyatta was able to complete 2 terms. But then when you listen to him, even when he's saying, hawa vijana wamekosa kuwa na kazi sahi. Are you saying that during President Kenyatta's tenure, they had jobs and now they don't? So you can see there's a bit of dismissing what the deeper grievances might be, and the attention here is to deal with the political question. And I'm just reflecting on what the government has been doing. So you find, initially you saw what CS Kipchumba Murkomen said, when you see them approaching the police stations, shoot. Which would be similar to shoot on sight. Then the president has said shoot to demobilize, perhaps, or to break a leg, or sounds wrong.
Actually, no, the break a leg is actually a good thing, but not according to the president anyway.
Then the Member of Parliament for Belgut coming out and saying shoot to kill. I'm just wondering, if you to look at the Constitution, Section 33, which is on freedom of expression. So they have a right to express themselves, but also that right is limited if that expression extends to propaganda for war, incitement to violence, and of course hate speech and advocacy of hatred. So there are several politicians that are guilty already on advocacy of hatred, which constitutes ethnic incitement, vilification of others, or incitement to cause harm. already.
Incitement to cause harm.
So when you talk about incitement to violence, is it okay when those in power incite the police officers against the people? So is it okay to incite against state violence? Because, of course, the police service ideally would have the monopoly of violence. So when does incitement become incitement? Is it when someone outside of government says whatever they said, never mind whether they are telling the police officers or the citizens? But then again, like Lina says about the place where Nelson Koech was making this statement. You see, if he wanted to tell the police officers, he can write a letter, he can call them to the house, he can call the Interior Cabinet Secretary to their house and instruct him. There are actually police officers standing behind him. We could actually just turn and tell them, guys, when you see these guys, shoot to kill. So when he expresses it using a microphone, making sure that not just the people that are listening to him, but also the millions of Kenyans are hearing him. So who is he telling? Is he just inciting the police against the people or also the people against the people? Because you see, once the message is out, you have no control over where it goes.
And also the people against the police.
Exactly. At this point that we speak, we're having this conversation because that information has come all the way from Belgut to Kilimani, where our studios are located. And so people have heard it. What are they supposed to think? So Kenyans hearing this, what are they supposed to think? These young people have grievances, or even this political class who the president is accusing of not wanting him to finish the term. If they hear such sentiments, what are they supposed to do with that information? So NCSC, if they want to take action, when they read the Constitution and that fact of incitement to violence and advocacy for hatred to cause harm, what are they thinking at this point in time?
To answer your question, just look into that camera and say what he said and see what will happen. I dare you. It will not be 2 seconds. And please, you have your camera, please. There it is. Just attempt to say what...
Now your tone.
No, let me say
and with that tone.
Because you have dared me, let me say it.
Okay,
I am not the member of parliament.
Well played. Because you know what would happen. Huh? This show would not end before they come after you. And you see, this is what we're talking about in terms of what question you're seeking to answer and what issues. And whether you're actually listening. You know, the president himself said, well, you know, you allowed so-and-so to finish 2 terms, so-and-so, what's the problem with me? And I thought, that's a moment for reflection, right? So, you know, even the phrase that when you're pointing one finger at someone, there's others that are pointing back at you. And I thought, for me, at that moment when he said, but why me? Sit down and think about it. Perhaps reflect. Why you? I don't know, but why you? Maybe a moment for reflection rather than this tiger and tigritude, mimi ndio niko, and I'm not going anywhere. But then one of the other issues that then you start to wonder about whether they are addressing the right question is the question of ethnicity has come up again. For context, and today I hope, Linus, we can speak openly, because sometimes when we speak about the ethnicity question, we have euphemisms and we talk about this community that comes from this region. But maybe it's about time we speak about it openly. So the hashtag We Are All Kikuyus was trending online. Like I said, at some point when I looked at that trend, there was 275,000 posts about it. But this all stemmed from what we see as an attempt to say that this is for one region or one community or what's happening in that particular region. This is all so very far away from, you know, all the issues that started from June 2024 to date. But here we are again. This is our fallback, isn't it, Linus? Well, you know, if there is a problem, don't deal with it, but throw ethnicity at the problem.
Yes, and that is the typical political refuge for Kenyan politicians. If you find it difficult, call in the tribe, bring in ethnicity, and that will, remember even on corruption cases, we've seen politicians when they face summons from the ESCC, you know, they tell the community that we have been summoned. It's not.
It's not just me.
It's not just me. It's you they want.
Yeah.
And this is typically what's going on right now. And it's not even about us talking about it. but the politicians themselves have finally found the courage. We are hearing them talking tribe. And this is an argument between two communities. You know, and by the president saying, why not Kibaki and why not Uhuru, he was clearly saying something that has ethnic connotations. I think we have that bite on 2. Yeah.
Tafadhali Bwana Rais, you shouldn't be the source of threats in Kenya. Wacha kutuambia ya kwamba tutakujua wewe ni rais. Sisi ndio tulikuchagua na tulikuchagua uwe rais wa Kenya. Wacha kututisha. Sisi hapana watu wa kutishwa. Hii fujo yote wananiletea. Mbona hawakuletea Kibaki? Mbona hawakuletea Uhuru? Mimi nimenyamaza. Mimi nimewavumilia, lakini mahali imefika. Enough is enough. You can call me whatever names you want to call me, but I will make sure that there is peace and stability in Kenya by all means possible.
Now, this is what the politics wants to reduce it to. It's not about any other grievances, except that this president is not coming from the same place as the last two. And is this really accurate that there has not been a lot of noise before against President Kibaki and President Uhuru Kenyatta? That's not true. What is true is all the presidents have always faced some challenges, either from their own regions or other regions. And indeed, in the last term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, remember that the relationships between him and the then Deputy President William Ruto were really, really bad. The only thing that didn't happen that time was there was no impeachment. And perhaps President Uhuru Kenyatta at the time, might have thought through what that would have meant. Because the problems President Ruto is facing right now is with Rigathi Gachagua is because of the impeachment. Is because of the removal of Gachagua as deputy president. And we're not even going to say, was it right or wrong, or whether he was the right person to be deputy president. I mean, politicians always have there are questions about their fitness for most offices. So, but Uhuru, unlike President Ruto, did not move to impeach his deputy. And I just want to listen to former President Uhuru Kenyatta decrying the abandonment by former Deputy President Ruto in 1.19.
Uko wapi? Badala ya kunisaidia kuondoa hiyo shida, wewe uko kwa soko kusema ulizeni ule. Basi si ungewacha uniwachie mimi nitafute mtu ambaye angenisaidia jameni. Wewe unajua hii shida sio ya mtu. Hii ni shida ya uko wapi wakati mimi nakuhitaji.
Okay, that was former President Uhuru Kenyatta lamenting the absence of his deputy president from duty. And I want us to listen to Deputy President William Ruto at the time blasting his boss Uhuru Kenyatta in 1.20.
Tafadhali Bwana Rais, you shouldn't be the source of threats in Kenya. Wacha kutuambia ya kwamba tutakujua wewe ni rais. Sisi ndio tulikuchagua na tulikuchagua uwe rais wa Kenya. Wacha kututisha. Sisi hapana watu wa kutishwa.
So we've gone through this, and we are well into our third term of this kind of drama. Because in the first term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, we were told by a very close confidant of the president at the time that in the second term he will not be the same kind of president, meaning he's going to deal with his deputy president. Now, and President Ruto, unlike his predecessor, did not wait for the second term, which is typically what a calculating politician would have done. He dealt with Rigathi Gachagua in his first term, and what we are actually experiencing right now is part of that fallout. And it's actually minimizing the viewpoint of government, because even security agencies, they are reducing this to something very, very small. So much so that I think as a country we are missing the big elephant in the room. When youth turn up and say it's about the cost of living, it's about unemployment, it's about
good governance.
It's about the soft issues. Yeah. But still, when the state agencies take their binoculars and all they see is Rigathi Gachagua versus President William Ruto, then we are caught in this, where for the last 1 year, we have not really made much progress politically, because there's a lot of firefighting, there's a lot of sniping between the two sides. And I think a lot of the time for this country is currently being wasted in those fights.
Yeah, and just, as we take the break, they're using old tactics that might have worked 20, 30 years ago in terms of whipping up tribal emotions, where there's an issue with the people, but you have a political solution to it. So after June 2024, what do? You decide to bring on an opposition party into government. All of these responses might have worked then. But they don't work now with the young people, who, by the way, are the majority, because they see right through it, which was why that hashtag was trending, for them to say, look, if you're trying to make this about tribal, then, we're going to transcend that. And maybe it's about time that they started to sort of catch up with, this is a different, breed of young people in the country who see things very differently, and for whom the response would have to be different. But then again, yes.
Just one thing that should be pointed out.
Yeah.
I mean, when the president talks about his two predecessors, the last three presidents have been elected by exactly the same political base.
Go figure. Yeah, very important point to note. Let's take a break. As we do that, this is to show you the efficiency of government. Like we reported just this evening, the High Court has said that the 6 commissioners and chairperson of the commission were duly appointed, and that the government should re-gazette their appointment to regularize that, to enable them to be sworn in. And just this evening, the Gazette notice for their appointment is out. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, Erastus Ethekon, Anne Jerry Nderitu, Moses Alutalala Mukhwana, Mary Karen Sorobit, Hassan Nur Hassan, Francis Odhiambo Adwol, and Fahima Arafat Abdallah have been gazetted as chair and commissioners of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, dated this 10th of July, just a few moments ago. That Gazette notice is in.
The other one was
just
dated
about a
10th June.
The other one was dated 10th June. Yes, exactly. That's right. So there you have it. Very quickly, right after the High Court has ruled, the government has gazetted the appointment of these commissioners of the IEBC. Let's take a break. There's lots that's happening. When we come back, we have more to talk about regarding the aftermath